Statham in a film directed by David Ayer, co-written by Stallone. I mean, I had to, right? My favorite line in this film is when Statham shakes this biker dude's hand and the guy goes, "Look at those bricks. You ain't no cop. You're a working man." Yes, really.
Look at those bricks. You ain't a cop. You're a working man.
Look, Statham action films are a dime a dozen, but it always seems to be enough incentive to get my dad and I to go see him in the theater. Some are good, some are weak, some are great, some are piss poor. And this one, well, okay, I'm not going to pretend like this is high art or anything revolutionary. It's Statham action. You know what you're getting into. So if you like that stuff, you'll be entertained. And if you don't, why waste your time? But man, this is quite a bit clunkier than something like The Beekeeper from last year, especially. Like, stuff in this film feels almost cartoonishly nonsensical at times. See, Statham's day job is as a construction worker in this film, and one day he sees this one fellow construction worker getting roughed up by a couple of thugs. So he grabs a steel bucket full of nails, which is a safety hazard on a job site, mind you, and then beats them up with it, throws the nails in their face, and then bashes them in with the frickin' bucket. Then after he's done with them, a bunch more guys show up, like a second wave of enemies in a video game, and that's when Statham pulls a shotgun out of thin air from behind him. And if that wasn't dumb enough, he does the thing I absolutely hate when they do in movies, where he racks the pump once, which doesn't make any sense. This is not how guns work. I can't believe we're still doing this. All that's gonna do is eject an already loaded shell. Why can they not figure this out? And then he aims it sideways so the ejector slide is facing the sky.
Okay.
And all of that is before the plot even gets off the ground, because that whole scuffle has nothing to do with the kidnapping of the construction boss's daughter that pulls Statham into this Taken ripoff plot. Oh, and Statham also has this young daughter who lives with his father-in-law, who's a total a-hole, and he's also friends with David Harbour, who's playing a blind person in this film. Yeah, so none of that actually matters, but they left it in the movie anyway. Stuff like that could have been cut out and trimmed this down to a tight 90 minutes, but they just chose not to. Also, David Harbour was clearly filming Thunderbolts at the same time he was in this movie, because he's got the same buzz cut and beard that Red Guardian has in that movie. And I know for a fact Disney was not going to let him change any of that for a role like this. Just kind of reminds me of when Mickey Rourke was in The Expendables and he looked exactly the same as he did in Iron Man 2 because of similar circumstances. Man, that is weird. Two actors who were in Marvel movies who also worked on action films that Stallone was involved in at the same time, and thus their characters in both respective films look exactly the same. Man, if I had $1 for every time that happened.
I'd have two, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Yeah, this plot gets super convoluted as Statham is making his way through the ranks of these mob types. He's interrogating guys, going undercover in drug deals, and presenting himself as a potential dealer, beating guys up, taking guys out, and while that doesn't sound overly complex, the way the movie executes it just doesn't really work the best. But then it'll get super tropey, like the scene where Statham goes to a biker bar, gets into a fight with the crew, and literally takes all these guys out in front of the big bad biker boss, who's sitting there watching the fight ensue on a throne made of tailpipes. I am not kidding. But you know what? At least the action in that sequence was fun, and they played Dropkick Murphys' The Boys Are Back while he was taking guys out, so that made it slightly more enjoyable. I'm guessing they also just threw in a Dropkick Murphy song because this is about a guy who works as a blue-collar craft worker on a construction site, and they're very pro-labor union as a band, so checks out. That said, his job as a construction worker doesn't really play into anything other than just the establishment of his character. Like, he says he was former Royal Marines. He served with them for 22 years. Now he lives in America. His wife was American. His daughter is now half and half, and all of his war buddies are American. He doesn't have one British friend, it seems. I mean, he clearly served with David Harbour, but it's not really clear if David Harbour was, like, for some reason a Royal Marine, or if Statham came over to America and became a soldier there too, or if there was just some alliance between the nations or what. He also has a friend who's randomly in the DEA, and we only get this person for one scene. There's no establishment before. He never comes up again. He literally gives him a call to get some intel and then moves on. We never see that dude ever again. So the point that I ingeniously didn't circle back around to when initially recording this was the fact that he doesn't have any reason to be a construction worker any more than he has a reason to be a McDonald's fast food worker. The concept of him being a working man plays nothing into the style of how he actually goes about his business. He definitely is just another ex-military character that Jason Statham has been playing for God knows how many years at this point. I was expecting a little bit more creative action with him using tools like picks and power drills and concrete and sledgehammers like the marketing for the film would lead you to believe. But really they don't do any of that outside of the initial skirmish he breaks up on his job site at the very beginning of the film. And the action overall is enjoyable. I mean, it's pretty par for the course. I'd say the one movie that wasn't the best for Statham action was like Wrath of Man, because he's just doing a lot more shooting, not as much fighting. This one gives you enough fighting, but at the same time, there's sequences where you're just like, what is going on here? One in particular where he's driving a motorcycle at night down a straight path. There are guys in trucks behind him firing at him out their windows. They cannot hit him whatsoever. It is like they are stormtroopers or something. He's not bobbing and weaving, ducking, or anything. He's not taking sharp turns to avoid them. No, they just can't frickin' shoot him. It's literally like, fire! The third act is probably the most action-heavy sequence. I mean, there's still plenty of action throughout the film, but it does feel like it drags on a little too long, and that could possibly be because the film is longer than it needs to be due to all the unnecessary subplots. There was just a weird nature to some of these enemies in this movie, because like at one point, I swear there was a dude dressed up like a samurai, and then we never saw him again. He just got off his motorcycle. He's literally got the whole samurai armor on, and like the other bikers have these like helmets, some with horns like they're Vikings or whatever. And I don't know if David Ayer was just like trying to create some kind of theme, but it had never played into the film at all before that moment, and all of a sudden when they show up and they're looking like that, you're just kind of like, am I seeing this right? And like plenty of other Statham action movies, when he's fighting, it's fun and enjoyable. Not home front levels of awesome, but then again, that is my gold standard for Statham action. Well, that and the basketball court scene from Expendables.
Now you know what I do for a living.
By the way, I totally forgot to mention this, but there is a moon in the third act that is unbelievably fake. Like, it is just a PNG plastered into the background. It looks way too big, like Bruce Almighty levels of stupidly unrealistically large. Speaking of Jim Carrey films, two of the Russian thugs in this film are dressed head to toe like Harry and Lloyd in blue and orange, but instead of wearing leisure suits and top hats, they're wearing track suits and bucket hats. Also, I don't like singling out actors for giving bad performances, because oftentimes they are only as good as the direction they're given, but man, was Eve Morrow awful. There's one scene where she's trying to be overly crazy, and it just hurts to watch. Like, she used much more colorful language than I'm going to, but there's one scene where she's got her little itty bitty gun to someone's head and she's going, "Oh, you're just so pretty, aren't you? Yeah." Like Jared Leto Joker levels of cringe. Maybe this is just a David Ayer thing. I don't know. One last thing, but I'm gonna put up a spoiler warning before I talk to it. So if you don't want to know anything, skip to that time in the video, just scroll ahead in the video to that time code and you will bypass all spoilers. I'm getting into spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Spoilers begin now. So in the end, when they finally take out all these criminals, Jenny, the girl who's been kidnapped, is tied up by her hands, and at one point she gets the jump on Eve Morrow's character and starts strangling her like this with her legs, and she starts cussing her out, yelling, "Effing die, you B-word," and proceeds to snap her neck with her legs. Keep in mind, this is a 19-year-old who just finished her first semester of college and has no combat training whatsoever. Well, I guess her dad did mention she took karate at one point, but you don't learn how to do that in karate. I'm pretty sure that's not even possible. The best part, though, is she does that, and then she gets down after Statham unties her, and she goes, "I think I killed her."
Do you think so?
Anyway, this film was goofy, dumb, stupid fun, and though it's not worth writing home about, it's certainly better than plenty of other stuff I've seen in the theater this year. So I don't know, score out of 10, I guess a 6? Again, numbers are arbitrary, and when it comes to Statham action, I try to judge it on a little bit less of a critical spectrum than if I were to judge something like that was intentionally meant to be high art or whatnot. But let me know in the comments what you thought if you saw this movie, if you even heard that it was out. I mean, Statham films come out around this time of year anyway. They're fun when they're good, and they're cringe when they're not. See anything he worked on with Guy Ritchie. But if you like this review, like this video, subscribe if you want more videos like this in your feed, hit the bell so you know when I'm uploading. And if you want, you can click the links in my description. It'll take you to plenty of social media platforms where I post tons of other reviews that don't always make it onto this platform. And even the ones that do make it on here, I always wind up posting posting on Letterboxd, Serialized, and Gigi long before I ever wind up editing together a video. So be sure to check those out if you're interested. But until next time, guys, God be with you, and take care.